Hello and welcome. I am Lian Buon and this is Rappler Talk. Is there a war on dissent under the Duterte administration? Today we talk about lawfare, or the misuse of legal systems to take down an enemy. We talk to one of the country's leading legal experts and a professor of law, Tony Lavinia. Hi, sir.
Hello.
Good to talk to you again. Parang there's not a day that I don't disturb you for your legal expertise.
Every other day.
Every other day. And I think that's an indication, would you say, sir, na there's something strange going on.
Yeah, there's lawfare, which is as you said, the misuse of law to go after dissent, to go after perceived enemies, political enemies, not enemies, it's political enemies of those in power, have always been there. But there are times when it's like a disease, a virus that is so prevalent and so dominant, and where we are at this time in that stage now, where law across the board is just being used to go after people who the government or this administration thinks is their enemy, and so it be business, activists, politicians, opposition politicians, religious people. Law is being misused to go after them. Media,
and teachers.
And professors, teachers also, yes.
So you agree that there is a war on dissent?
Yes, definitely. I think it's an open war. No? It's not even a hidden war or a low intensity war. It's very open. I mean, the latest, of course, is with ABS-CBN. I mean, in just silencing that particular powerful voice. I mean, that's not even a dissenting voice, but allows dissent to happen. I mean, and again here the use of law to do that to the power and the position, and through the franchise rules, no, where their franchise is not being extended or not even being heard for extension.
Sir, before we talk about broad terms, let's step back a bit. In 2016, or in the early years, ano yung unang-unang nakita mo na, oh wow, this is happening, and you felt that we were gonna go down this path into warfare?
Una sa lahat, it was really the war against drugs, diba?
Okay.
The war against illegal drugs, no, was right away the misuse of law. Because first of all, yes, it's illegal to commit drugs, no, to use drugs, to push drugs. It's illegal. But it's always been understood that there was a distinction between using and pushing and selling. But they used law to make that distinction disappear, and they used law as the excuse for killing people. Manlaban. Kasi nanlaban means self-defense by the police. It's a legal concept, but we know from the many nanlaban incidents that there has been no investigation if in fact there was manlaban. So for me, it really started with that, coupled with the initial attacks against certain businessmen. So that too, in the case of Mr. Umpin, I mean, absolutely no basis for attacking the business, what was that? The online also, I think, gambling also of Mr. Umpin. In fact, they flourish after that, right? So absolutely no basis, but saying again, using law again to go after that, to force him to sell. You know what I mean? And in my view, Mr. Umpin had not done anything against Mr. Duterte. It was just to show that I can do this.
So going back to the war against drugs, yung naaalala ko yung mga oral arguments sa Supreme Court, the rights that were violated allegedly is like the right to privacy, the right to domicile, and yet it's still happening. So do you think merong impact sa Duterte administration criticisms like this na parang pinupoint out na you're doing something wrong, or is this just emboldening them even further?
Well, you know, at first they were very proud of what they're doing, but they've actually have reversed and deny that these things have happened, were happening, and that's because of the potential threat from the International Criminal Court, from the international community. I mean, at first they were actually boasting about the number of people that they have killed, etc. But they've actually tried to walk that back. See, the thing is, I'm going to say nice thing, but the good thing about the positive thing is when you use law to justify bad things, that same law can eventually be used to turn against you, and being able to speak truth to power and say, looking at the law that you use, you've actually missed the fact that I'm saying you misused this. Hindi mo siya ginamit sa tamang paraan yung batas na ito. That's actually turning around. I mean, we saw that also in the Marcos years. The Marcos years, of course, for a while they'll get away with it. I mean, and because they have control of all the different forces of society and the different institutions, they'll get away with it. But even from within their own ranks, you will eventually find cracks when you use law, compared to, let's say, using just brute power, brutal power, and but that naman has its own critique. I mean, you can also, if you also use that, you can also get condemned in a very direct way for doing something illegal. But when you do something illegal through the law, you eventually find yourself in contradictions.
Sir, you're a human rights lawyer, you are a constitutional law professor. What do you feel every time the law you think is being misused? Parang ganun ba kadaling butasan yung batasan? It might be frustrating.
Masakit. Kasi lalo na yung I'm a teacher, and I mean, I tell students they have to believe in the rule of law, they have to believe in the courts. I mean, they can never disrespect the Supreme Court even if they disagree with it. I mean, that's the teaching that I've always done. I mean, and constitutional professors would have to do that. I've heard Professor Carl Lucas, for example, say that again and again. He's a very strong critic, but he will always say that the Supreme Court, you know, we always respect the Supreme Court.
But how do you challenge them?
But respect doesn't mean you don't challenge them. Respect means you actually challenge them. You challenge them in the case, you challenge them through opinion. And if you lose this case, you challenge them in another case until you win and turn it around. Kasi there's a history naman of that eventually, things can turn around. Even by the same people who decided elsewhere. Here, some of our colleagues from the opposition, current opposition, will disagree with me in this example, but I actually think that the use of lawfare, it was not originated by Duterte. I mean, it was originated to Marcos. But even in the time of Pinoy, you have prominent examples of that. Example, going after GMA. And I mean, when she was stopped from traveling, even when she didn't have, there was even no case against her. And I mean, and full supporter of Senator De Lima now, and to have her released, but
she didn't have authority to stop
she didn't have authority to stop. She was TRO'd, she still did it. 3 or 4 justices actually sided with her in the TRO, that's including Justice Leonen, Justice Carpio, Chief Justice Sereno, etc. But when the final decision came, even Justice Carpio and Leonen sided. It was a unanimous decision that you cannot do something like this, diba? So I feel confident that even that the Supreme Court eventually corrects itself, because you have to think about their historical role. That's why in the Marcos regime, at the very beginning, at the beginning they will always split, right? But even at some point when Marcos already gotten control, a number of his own appointees went after him, dissented. I mean, of course, the Hanky himself is a Marcos appointee. Muñoz Palma was a so just small numbers first, but eventually significant numbers, such that in certain cases you would actually get a good result. Now, of course, it's only after EDSA that people were more courageous, and of course new people came in. I mean, again, that's also true for GMA. I mean, I think she deserved to have been freed much earlier, but the Supreme Court, many of whom were appointed her, did actually waited until the president comes in. So the law side, it corrects itself, honestly. And you can show, if you have a history,
but
that it changes. But it's the moment. It's the moment because The moment is that the executive branch wants to do this and wants to stifle, and it does stifle dissent, and it has a chilling effect on everyone. No?
So sir, parang ang nakikita natin, it's timing, the political climate at the time. So it paints a picture of laws being very vulnerable to politics. And how do we convince Filipinos to believe in law when nakikita naman nila that it's vulnerable to politics and
well, it's a business of us lawyers who are dissenters and human rights lawyers and civil liberties lawyers to fight. I mean, and to show that even in times, the worst times, even when all the power is with the administration, we can stand up to that administration. My own experience is like that. Being a martial law baby, I actually didn't believe that law was an option to fight the regime. But then I saw Pepe Jokno and Heidi Yorak and Jojo Binay to be those lawyers from Flag and Mabini and that told me that you would have to do this and that eventually it corrects itself. I think that in the future what we have to do lang, what is sad is that we're always repeating our history, including on lawfare. And I mean, there are times we allow it. There are times when clearly the rule of law is dominant. I mean, now it's what we call the rule by law. I mean, versus the rule of law. Ang kailangan natin gawin after this time, how do we make sure na the rule of law is always dominant, diba? And in my view, that's about choosing the Supreme Court justices rightly, properly. It's about ensuring the independence of the courts, especially the Supreme Court, so that you're able to rely on them. I mean, and unlike right now where we have doubts whether we can rely them or not. I try to actually suppress my doubt, right? But it's because I know that the process even of appointment is so politicized, and they're such subject to such such influence. I mean, and again, the two presidents that have been influencing the Supreme Court is Duterte, of course, and Pinoy. I mean, and well, GMA, those three presidents, Ramos and Cory, allowed the Supreme Court to do whatever they need to. Those, for me, are the ideal precedents with respect to the way they do the Supreme Court. Marcos did the same thing as Duterte is now doing.
There's really not much monitoring kasi, sir, sa appointments ng Supreme Court. I mean, kapag nagko-cover nga, sir, kami ng live stream ng JBC interviews, ang viewers lang, 1, 2, 3. And those are reporters, magkakatabi lang kami. So what is...
Nakikita mo yun?
Nakikita namin yan. Parang, tayo-tayo lang nanonood dito. So what is your gauge ng sentiment ng mga tao? Are they interested in the rule of law? Do they know how much is at stake? And how do you get them interested?
Yeah. Like many things in the Philippines, unless you're personally affected, people are not interested, diba? So the strategy would have to be to have actually interested groups and lobby groups to really get involved. I mean, for a while, it's seasonal din siya. During the time of GMA, because of that fear, there was actually a judicial watch and that type of thing. That disappeared with the time of Pinoy. Maybe there was trust that the right decisions would be made. No? So for us, we have to think about how to make that process more transparent. Some people actually think that mas mabuti pa yung commission and appointments. Kasi kahit paano sa commission and appointments, kung marami kang problema, lalabas talaga siya. Diba? Hindi siya hindi siya matatago, no? But others think naman it's so demeaning for future justices because of the way the commission and appointments But what I know, based also on what I've seen and all the conversations I've had with present and former justices, no, the most important characteristic you want to have, quality you want to have of a high court justice is independence, di ba? More than even competence. Kailangan mo syempre may basic
So, but
competence,
sir,
but you don't need brilliance. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need people to be super brilliant. But what you need more than anything is
But
independence.
sir, how would you ever attain, or do you trust that there's ever 100% independence when they are appointed? All of them down to the judges and prosecutors are appointed.
Because we saw that during the time of Cory, and you saw that during the time of Ramos, and you see, and even the time of GMA, because many of the appointments from the previous president were still around. She couldn't really get away with many things that she wanted to get away with. I mean, it's just, and I would say in the time of Pinoy as well, because you had the residue of all the appointments of, and then Pinoy appointed justices that were independent, like C.J. Sereno and Justice Marvick. They voted against President Aquino in certain decisions that were important, like the DAP case and the PDAF case. The comparative period of this court is the Marcos court, because it's just that so many appointees are coming. You know, it's the way the courts, the appointments have converged around the current president being able to appoint so many. You know, I mean, the current president also, has decided that he will appoint all career justices.
Is that good? Is that good, sir?
Many career justices are good and certainly qualified, but it's not good to have the Supreme Court come from one source.
Yeah.
It's always good to, for me, the best courts of the Philippines, Supreme Courts of the Philippines, are when essentially they're 1/3 career, 1/3 like government or political backgrounds, and 1/3 academic and professional sort of private
So,
practitioners.
sir, ngayon, ang trend, it's all been Court of Appeals
Yeah, Court of
justices.
Appeals.
And if I'm not mistaken, ang dalawa lang na hindi judiciary is Justice Leonen from the academe, or the executive because he was
And
from
Kagiwa,
OPAP,
the
and
two of them.
Justice Kagiwa
Yeah,
from
the two
Malacca.
of
So,
them.
dalawa na lang sila. Do you
Dalawa
think
na
that's a
lang
good
sila.
balance?
No, that's not a good balance. If I mean, I think the good balance would have been, 1/3. I would say like 1/3 career judiciary, at most 1/2 career judiciary, and then the other half or the other 2/3 would be. You also have I would also be okay with people coming from the DOJ, doesn't have to go through the courts, the DOJ, the Solicitor General, because that's also an equivalent career path in government. Or in politics even is okay, congressmen, senators that are good legal people. That's also a good background to have. But then it would always be good to have practitioners, 2 or 3 practitioners and 2 or 3 academics, 5 or 6. Because they're very independent and you cannot predict them, even no matter who appoints them. No matter who appoints them. I mean, and on the other hand, and while career justices are very good and they actually know the job and what they do, almost through all their career, and I mean, it's like the military, it's like the foreign service. I mean, they have to go through all of these political steps and all these political endorsements, etc. And that has an effect, right? I mean, I'm not saying it affects their judgment, but it affects the way they see things as political, rather than being removed from all of that.
So I'm just gonna dial back to dissent. So ang pinaka-recent nating balita ngayon is the Senator Trillanes and 10 others have been charged of conspiracy to commit sedition. Now, ang sabi sa amin nung panel lead, si Prosecutor Torrevillas, is kind of one of the first conspiracy to commit sedition na
I
kaso.
cannot even think of a conspiracy to commit sedition without sedition being committed. Because conspiracy, I always said this is again weaponizing the law, because there's a law on conspiracy to commit sedition, yes. Okay? And there's a crime of sedition.
And there's a crime of inciting to sedition.
And there's crime of inciting to sedition, right? Clearly, they found here there is no inciting to sedition, because no one is asking overthrow the government or let's hate Duterte. Clearly, no one has committed sedition in the first place. conspiracy is always just a mode of doing things. It's not, but here we punish the crime in itself. But the premise have always been that there is the crime of sedition or inciting sedition was committed. Because that's how you prove it. How will you prove? Unless they prove that there was a meeting, they all sat down and let's decide to do this. And nothing of the facts are like that.
So yun yung sinasabi mo, sir, na overt act. Kailangan may overt act kang makikita.
Yeah, ng inciting or ng sedition. Kasi in this case, di ba, even a simpler, another case, conspiracy to kill a person. Like the Ampatuan verdict, I'm actually doing a series on that from in the news. Yung Ampatuan verdict, di ba? Nag-meeting sila.
Nag-meeting sila, may mga
sinabi sila na nagplano sila. Diba? And then, in-execute nila, di ba? Ano yung proof mo na may agreement sila? Ang proof mo na may agreement sila kasi in-execute nila, di ba? In this case, there's even no meeting to talk about. In the Trillanes case, wala namang meeting. Di naman nag-meeting si Trillanes, si Paring Bert, si Father Albert Lea, Father Flavio Villanueva, si Yoli Ong. There's nothing. Because he's actually saying, I talk to this, I talk to that, I talk to him, I talk to indifferent, There is no meeting of minds. There is no agreement on anything, di ba? Now, kung actually may sedition na commit, pwede mong i-infer na, there must have been a meeting to get to this, di ba? And then that's when you get to charge it crime separately.
So the fact that there was no sedition committed, and the panel made that very clear, it dismissed all complaints of inciting to sedition and sedition, and that you cannot point to any overt act na they conspired, then how could they charge them of conspiracy?
So it's an example of lawfare because you got an obscure provision in the revised penal code, conspiracy to commit sedition, you have no basis for it, you still use it to suppress dissent.
Sir, would you say that sedition, yun yung pinaka-tricky, yun yung parang pinaka-laging kalaban ng freedom of expression?
Yes.
Kasi how would you say that this is just being critical? This is just being a dissenter?
Exactly. We should actually, I think sedition itself is a questionable crime, because I think the part about overthrowing, di ba? If it's actually done, the act of overthrowing, that already overlaps with rebellion. So there's no need for that itself. So what's really being punished in sedition is sort of the speech, and under our laws, you can actually, be angry at the president and express that anger. That is not unconstitutional.
That is guaranteed
that is
by
not
the
illegal.
Constitution. Okay, so
you can gather together to criticize the president.
So that's freedom of assembly.
Yeah.
So
an association.
An association. Sir, let's go to freedom of speech. Sabi nga ng administration, actually, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, that there are limits to freedom of expression. Doon na siguro papasok, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, yung clear and present danger.
Yeah.
So when is there a clear and present danger?
There's a clear and present danger when there's a threat, for example, a riot, a physical attack against Malacanang, for example, when there's a clear and present danger of a threat that is imminent and about to happen, and that speech will lead to that attack. So it has to be a speech that leads to an attack on Malacanang, physical attack.
So sir, dapat merong na-consummate na...
They have to be there. For example...
A crime must have been done after, parang ganon.
No, it can be...
A harm must have been done after.
This is about suppression of speech.
Yes.
It's the context. For example, if I'm here in Rappler or in a classroom, I can pretty much say anything. And there's gonna be no clear and present danger of anything happening. But if you're in Mindiola, and there's a big rally of 10,000 people, right? Okay. And you shout, let's go, sulong natin yung Malacanang. Kung sinulong yung Malacanang, liable ka na doon.
Okay. Pero pag hindi nangyari, sir?
Pag hindi nangyari, hindi ka naman liable doon. Kasi ano naman yun, wala namang nangyari na di ba? But in that case, not so much freedom of speech, but freedom of assembly, pwedeng i-deny ang permit, di ba? Kasi may clear and present danger na if you allow a rally in front of Malacanang, pwede silang Diba? That's why, pero yan, ang nire-regulate mo hindi yung content ng rally nila. Yung presence lang nila dun sa hindi mo pwede sabihin, hindi pwede mag-rally against Malacanang. Pwede mo sabihin, hindi mag-rally, pwede mag-rally sa Malinjola. Doon kayo, di ba? Doon kayo bandang Ligarda. Hanggang doon lang kayo. Kasi because of the danger that it could cause.
Sir, you sabi, yung where what you're saying is dapat may harm na magagawa to the president or to the administration. Babalikan ko yung definition ng sedition. Meron kasi doon na inflict any hate, any act of hate upon the person. So, kahit walang harm, basta you just hate them.
Kaya nga, I mean, it's an hardly used crime because inflict hate simply mean, let's say, mumurahin mo yung presidente, di ba? But that's also guaranteed by freedom of speech, di ba? So, it's kung papasok ka ng present danger, ang test ng yan ng klaseng prosecution is may actual danger kang i-create for the president, di ba? So, example, so halimbawa ako nga, pabalik ako, mumurahin ko si Pangulo wherever, di ba? I don't do that kasi hindi ako namumura. Pero if I do that, and in my classroom, in a newsroom, I'm not, di ba? But, dumada sa SONA, di ba? Okay. And then dadaan si Pangulo, mumurahin ko siya, ang daming tao magmumura-mura kami, di ba? That creates a clear and present danger. Not just to the president, but to everyone, di ba? Kasi baka mag-riot. Yun, pwedeng tigilin yun. Di ba? So, may nagmumura na active. Nangyari na yan, di ba? Ng isang SONA, ng president, baw din ako sa kanya. Lumabas siya, hinarap niya yung mga demonstrators, di ba? And minumura siya ng mga demonstrators, ha? Sigawan siya ng mga demonstrators okay naman kasi hindi naman sila dinisperse, di ba? But actually, pwede silang disperse at that point, di ba? O pwede silang itigil kasi it can create a clear and present danger na not just to the president but to everyone na baka biglang mag-riot siya. Yun ang ibig sabihin nun.
So, sir, what can we give as comfort to the dissenters that yung itong principle ng clear and present danger ay maproprotektahan sila? Is there rich jurisprudence that upholds?
The jurisprudence is very clear. Okay. And the rules are very clear. And they will be vindicated, di ba? But ganito yan. I always tell my students here this, and everyone that's asserting should know this. Di ba? You have to love the Bill of Rights to understand it. And you have to defend your rights to protect it, di ba? So mananalo lang sila kung gagawin nila. Pero kung hindi lang gawin, talo na sila. And that's the same with media, di ba? If media stops publishing and printing and criticizing because natakot sila, talo na kayo. Now, if you do the right thing, you still report, you still write, di ba? Maaring sa moment na yon you're under threat, di ba? But historically, always we win. Always there's vindication, di ba? But there are people who pay the price. And there are people, and we call them heroes, di ba? Mga bayani.
That's what I was going to say. That it's really nice to listen to now. We will be vindicated someday. There is a day of reckoning, and history has said we've come out of this stronger and everything. Pero paano yung mga makukulong or paano yung mga mahahasel na magbabayad ng piyansa?
Kaya kailangan mong gawin yun. Kailangan nyo pa rin gawin yung ganyan. Pa rin yung trabaho natin. Kasi kung hindi natin gawin, talo na tayo. Pag gawin mo yun, maaring may price to pay, but eventually, you will win. Wala siyang magic bullet. Wala siyang magic bullet na you cannot get your freedom without fighting for it, diba? Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. You can only have your freedom if you fight for it. You can live in freedom only if you are, in fact, freely doing the things you should be doing.
Sir, paano yung mga nasa laylayan ng society na who can't even afford calling a lawyer?
Well, yeah.
Who will fight for them?
Yeah, well, that's why, diba? That's why we have serious problems of inequality and lack of access to justice in the Philippines because of people also like that. But there are naman groups that are yun naman ang kanilang mission to help yung mga nasa laylayan. I mean, ako pupugay lang sa, for example, sa National Union of People's Lawyers. I mean, yun talaga sila, nasa front line sila. Pero pinapatay din sila. Alam natin yun. Pinapatay sila natin. Pero ano yan Ngayon, babalik lang ako dun sa sinasabi ko na gusto mo maging malaya, kailangan kumilos ka na parang malaya ka.
Have to be fearless.
Yeah. Well, act fearless, even if you're afraid.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you think I'm afraid? Of course I'm afraid, but there's always a lot of stake for everything man. Pero, but kung i-bear in mind mo kasi na in the end, na panalo naman talaga in the end, di ba? Parang, lang yan, blip lang yan yung And then, ang duty natin, pero ito yung duty natin niya, kayo as journalists, ako as lawyers, ang duty natin is yung ating mga kasama na tina-target, di ba? Tabihan natin sila.
Yeah.
That's our duty. Samahan natin sila.
Close ranks, fortify.
To close ranks for freedom.
Yeah.
Diba?
Another example of a case, sir, cyber libel. I mean, disclosure, Rappler is being sued for cyber libel. Yung pag-extend ng liability na from 1 year to 12 years, does that bother you?
Of course, because I have written so many things personally also, di ba, na that can pwede pang bumalik sa inyo, kaya napaka-critical ng na yan. And I mean, it would violate yung many principles of law if you actually did that. Particularly yung ex post facto, di ba? The ex post facto law is very very clear about that. No, you cannot interpret if ever man interpret siya, that's only for from the day of the
you cannot punish something that wasn't criminal before
yes,
at the time
exactly,
it was committed.
at the time it was committed, di ba? Or not thought to be criminal at the time it was committed.
Sir, yung mga nakikinig nito, parang sasabihin nila, these are all parang broad legal terms na hindi naman namin naiintindihan. Are they in danger also of being victimized by...
Well, yes, because it's...
Baka sabihin kasi nila para lang yan sa mga politicians and those...
Not really, kasi di ba, all our freedoms are at stake when law is being used to do that. Tawag ko sa maraming batas natin, maraming karapatan natin yung essential rights. We never use them until we actually need them.
Okay.
And then actually we need them. And the moment target ka ng state, and anyone can be a target to the state, then suddenly you need to have, you actually need to have those rights, and those are essential rights na meron ka. No? Again, history yung importante sa atin dito na sa simula, Marcos regime, simula ka ng ito lang mga hinahabol, pero later on, ang dami ng hinahabol, di ba? Ganun din ang mangyayari sa atin. So, we have to be early pa lang, ngayon pa lang din, di ba? Mag-close ranks na tayo to be sure na, so, ganun ang war against drugs, di ba? Mahihirap na naman yung unang but eventually, kung maubusan sila ng mahirap, pupunta yan sa middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, di ba? So it'd be very foolish kung syempre mas gusto ko mas maaga natin harapin siya kaysa later on na parang ipadaan mo muna na ang daming masasaktan. And that's why we have to challenge yung lawfare at the early stages na nakikita natin siya.
Sir, do you think the legal profession or even the civil libertarians came together just in time, nahuli, maaga?
Maaga compared to the Marcos years. Late compared to what we should have done. Dapat day one pa lang, di ba? So, compared to the Marcos years, di ba, the first 2 to 3 years, talagang almost zero siya, no? Yung lumalaban na mga lawyers, mga civil rights, Kasi, of course, marami din sa nabilanggo din. Although sa first 6 months, maraming lumaban, Kaya maraming cases. Tinatawag na ratification cases, plebiscite cases, martial law cases. So all of that, the lawyers actually fought. First set of lawyers already fought. Pero hindi siya systematic. And hindi, Manila lang. Yung mga top lawyers, like Joker Arroyo, yung ganun. Later on, Pepe Chocno when he got out. But when Pepe Chocno got out in 1974, nilawak niya yung buong bayan, di ba? So flag lawyers became I would say the NUPL before, yung flag lawyers flag recruited a lot of local lawyers who fought at the local courts, fought at the detention centers to secure the rights of people. That took mga 5-6 years before talagang dumami. Ngayon, at 3 years, we're actually quite united, no? Lahat ng mga lawyers united, ng human rights at civil rights lawyers were united in fighting lawfare. I mean, we're actually getting together this Friday to get that to systematize yung laban namin ng dahil hindi na lang, di ba, mayroong grupo, may atake sa human rights, so war against drugs, may atake sa media at sa opposition, so war against democracy. May atake rin sa business, di ba? Yung mga business companies from Manila Water, Manila to itong itong ABS-CBN. I mean, to the extent that's an attack both on the media and business, di ba? So again, using the law in all of that. I mean, honestly, I prefer that the law is used kaysa the gun is used, di ba?
Okay, yeah.
Kasi talagang wala laban. Kasi wala akong baril, no? Just to say na, if ever hinuli ako, kasi maraming hinuli, tapos nagpa-plant ng baril, di ba? That would be the funniest thing.
Let it be on record that Ginto Nila Villa doesn't have a gun.
I don't believe in guns, absolutely. From ever since, pa siguro. So, yan. Diba? That would be the most ridiculous thing to say, to charge me or my family, anyone in my family, illegal possession of firearm. Because at least sa lawfare, ang laban mo, word, di ba?
Yeah.
You fight each other with words, and they have serious import because if mali yung word, yung kliyente mo, yung pinaglalaban mo, mabibilanggo, di ba? So hindi siya basta-basta lang din. But at least you don't have to use knives or guns.
So do you believe our laws, our statutes, they can protect us if we just fight enough?
Not enough, clearly. Not enough.
Sir,
when this is over, marami akong gustong gawin in terms of the Bill of Rights.
What is the top of your mind?
Yung absoluteness ng Bill of Rights muna, yung to make it very clear lang na di ba? May exceptions, but the exceptions should be rare and not the rule. No? Makita mo yan sa martial law decision ng Supreme Court, di ba, na nangingibabaw yung power of the president over our rights, no? And I'd like to make it very clear na much more clear sa I would like to have a clearer, more specific law holding people who misuse the law in the government side accountable, di ba? For me, when this is over, one of the things we have to do is to investigate and to take into account the Department of Justice people, the OSG people, those who misuse the law, di ba? There's no question, and I think you wrote about people have roles, di ba? So the DOJ is the prosecutor and works for the president. Di ba? OSG is wala namang question about that. But are you using it di ba? Are you using the law in a fair way? Is for me the question. Even the Department of Justice, while they're under the political authority of the president, statute-wise, law-wise, it's very clear that they have to take independent judgment when they charge a person with a crime. In other words, hindi pwede na sinabi ni Pangulo, i-charge mo siya, i-charge mo siya. No. Diba? Kailangan ka mag-preliminary investigation, kailangan mo tingnan yung facts, kailangan ka mag-determine ng probable cause, kailangan tingnan mo yung ebidensya mo. Hindi siya pwede na just because the president wants it, gagawin mo. Diba? Or sa OSG, just because ito yung gusto ng Pangulo or gusto ng yun na kagad ang side mo, you have to also make an independent assessment based on your statutory duty to be fair, to be independent, you're not the judge, yes, you have to, but you can actually do that. I mean, in my view, actually sa US, mas clearer yan noon. Ngayon din, nagka-problema sila. But right now, I don't know if you heard the news. So, you did, kasi so you comment on it. Diba, yung Attorney General nila, for example, na very close kay Trump, politically aligned with Trump, at least is saying na kung magpapatuloy itong mga tweet ni Trump, that I will quit, di ba? Kasi it undermines the independence of the Department of Justice. Kasi may independence in the Department of Justice to ascertain criminal liability. Hindi siya, di ba? Of course, they have to follow what the president says, but only within the law.
Sir, that's what I was gonna ask kanina. Is there such a thing as suing for false prosecution?
Yeah, of course. Of course,
Pero
nandiyan na naman, but
at
hindi
what-
siya malinaw. Hindi siya...
At what stage mo siya magagawa kapag acquitted ka na?
Even before that siguro, I mean, even before that, di ba? You have to, careful ka lang din. Kasi ayaw mo din naman na yung DOJ mo, yung prosecutors mo, lahat na lang ng file nila ng charges, pa-file din sila ulit, di ba? So kaya kailangan malinaw yung procedure at yung ano, di ba? May internal, may internal decision making doon. Kasi hindi naman, ayaw ko din naman na as I have been on the government side and I've never been accused of anything except making a wrong decision, which is actually, you can never file a lawsuit against a government official because he made the wrong decision, di ba?
Well, pwedeng may gross negligence,
yan.
the admin cases.
Gross negligence, corruption, pag may nagbabayad ka, etc. But in terms of just making a decision, nobody can just say, I'm filing, graft and corruption. You can make an appeal, walang problema yun. But for example, make a wrong decision, as long as walang gross negligence at walang corruption, di ba, I should not be held liable for it. Because the moment you do that, nobody will decide anymore.
Yeah.
So ayoko din naman ng gano'n na parang, kasi dangerous din yun if you allow every person to question prosecution and say unjust prosecution or you're gonna. But I think we can make the distinction kung when it is clearly grossly political. May ano yan, may precedent yan and taya ko ito sa bato na ito ang gagamitin na precedent in the years to come when we finally have to resolve, di ba, and clean up all the mess that's being created now. Broca versus Enrile. That case of Broca versus Enrile, ang finding ng court doon na lahat ng mga kaso final against Broca, Ben Cervantes, and others, kasama pa dyan si Howie Severino, si iba-ibang mga May Paner, kasama doon. No basis, and it was all political. And when a case is all political, no basis, it has to be dismissed.
Meron
so something like
may
that.
May punitive ba dun sa...
Hindi, dun wala. Vinoid lang lahat ng procedures. Pero nandun yung standard. Okay. The standard is walang basis, di ba? It's all political. Okay. And it was proven it's all political, di ba? So yun ang standard natin. When we found out it's all political, and there's no basis for me, the example of that is the Limas detention, the Limas cases, di ba? No matter how you put it, wala talagang ka-basis-basis yung di ba? Wala ka-basis-basis yung case. I mean, hindi siya yung tamang kaso if ever man na So I think you should hold accountable the prosecutors there.
So there must be a decision first na mali yung kaso before you can...
Well, yes, importante yun. Kasi otherwise, you will allow everyone to question a prosecution, di ba?
So ano lang, wild imagination. In the next 5-10 years, and CJ Sereno goes to Supreme Court and says, overturn my co-warranto ousting. And the Supreme Court sides with her and says, you should not have been ousted, co-warranto. Pwede ba siyang mag-co-warranto pabalik?
Co-warranto, hindi yun co-warranto pabalik. Just to be appointed by the president. I mean, the solution there is the president will have to appoint her back to the Supreme Court as Chief Justice. I mean, when there is an opening.
How can she make her ousters accountable when that happens?
By the time, kasi most of her ousters are already gone from the Supreme Court, di ba?
What is their accountability by then? Damages?
Mahirap din kasi tricky yung case na yun kasi tricky yung case na yun. Very different ito sa co-warranto ng ABS-CBN, di ba, na walang facts that the Supreme Court relied on. In this particular case, kay CJ Sereno, they had the facts because of JBC siya. And then the JBC gave all the, may importanteng doctrine ito for you reporters and for us in this field, diba? Yung doctrine of operative facts, yung kahit na mali ang desisyon, pero meron na siyang facts na na-establish, diba? So in this particular case, meron na mga na-appoint, meron na mga diba? The way to correct it is not to go back to, you cannot restore it to zero, diba? You have to, ang restoration mo is for the future. So sa akin, if the theoretical situation comes back, in terms of her own position, it's really just having her appointed again and reappointed again. No? I mean, you don't even have to deal with whether na tama yung co-warranty niya hindi for that kasi ang assumption mo na in this next, if she's appointed again, that the whole procedure is followed. No? I mean, as already mas ganun yung corrective mechanism. But it's like people who have killed in the war against drugs. Hindi naman natin sila pwedeng mabuhayin, di ba? But we can compensate them and their families. We can compensate their families, di ba? And we can still go after against those who were responsible.
Interesting discussion. So for our viewers who want to get more of this kind of discussion, you will have an event?
Yes, it's important to do this for Friday.
This Friday
in La Salle University in TAF. We have a conference on lawfare. And I mean, looking at various aspects. So we'll have actually Senator De Lima will be delivering not in person, I suppose, but in video or read for her. Because she's really the example of lawfare, di ba? Before your very eyes. But when it's, every day, but almost every day, naisip ko yung gabing injustice. Parang Aquino na all the years of the Marcos, di ba, na walang charges, o mali-mali ang charges, di ba? And that's really the flow. But we're looking at all the different things. Media will be looked at how law is being weaponized against media establishments, and Rappler is one of those, and ABS-CBN is another. Inquirer also was subject to lawfare, no? I think we will also have activists and people coming from the provinces. I mean, who have been victims of using law to suppress their rights, no? Yung rights of basic sectors, political detainees, yun, example of political detainees, really weaponization. Many of the political detainees, as we were saying, are not organizers. They're thinkers. They don't carry guns, diba? Like me, they don't carry guns. But since the only way to keep them in prison without bail is pa-plant sila ng yun ang standard na ginagawa, diba? And for me, I think if ever I hope one day there'll be a Secretary of Justice that's bold enough to tell his prosecutors, make a determination. Kung nakita mo, we saw these UP students, UP alumni in you look at those people, they are not capable of bearing guns. I have a client, si Miles Albasin in the Visayas, she's not capable of carrying a gun, di ba? But she's being charged for illegal possession of firearms, of explosives. Diba? It's just ridiculous, di ba? But unfortunately, yung prosecutors parang tatanggapin nila na whatever the police or the military is telling them.
Sir, sabi mo kanina, I hope you see a Secretary of Justice that can tell. So you do not see it in the current Secretary?
No, obviously they're still filing all of those charges, di ba? And that's the same also during the Pinoy time and the GMA time. I mean, it's a standard, di ba? When the proper thing in law is very simple. If in fact these people are actively, diba, rebels, NPAs or National Democratic Front, illegally part of of an organization that's overthrowing the government, file rebellion against them. That's the right legal thing to do, diba? Why will you file? They just arrested Salas, no, and said may guns si Salas. That's so ridiculous, di ba? We know that Salas has been a retired
this is the former
CCP chair, di ba? Retired from a long time ago, di ba? It's just the misuse of law. I mean, and then we all went to law school and we were told you cannot do this, di ba? Ganun kasimple lang. But all because gusto namin silang i-keep sa jail muna. 90% of these cases gets thrown out. They get acquitted because there's no proof of anything, no? But we still persist in doing that, diba? using the law against your citizens, using the rule of law. It's not, as I said, rule of law, it's rule by law.
So sir, yung about the event,
So
can
events are tough,
anybody go in?
Yes, that I think there's
You just have to sign up
you have to
somewhere.
sign up.
Yeah.
You have to ano lang go Google it and
Yeah.
lawfare conference
We'll provide details
provide
for
the
you
details for you and you have to ano lang for no, we start I think at 8 o'clock on Friday and end at 5 o'clock.
Okay, so for those interested in hearing more about discussion, and if there's really lawfare, and you say there is lawfare in the Philippines, catch the is it a whole day forum?
Yes, it's all day, 8 to 5.
An all-day forum in the LaSalle
We have
College of Law in BGC?
in TAF.
In TAF, okay, so in the LaSalle
Henry
University.
C. Hall,
in TAF.
and we have people also. We have both Philippine and foreign speakers that will talk about all the various forms of lawfare being done.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Law is really fascinating.
Yes, you should be a law student.
It's something that we should talk about every day if we can. Thank you. Thank you for watching Rappler Talk.
Thank you.